99% of you are not subscribed to the channel. At 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories. Subscribe now.
In the vast uncharted expanses of the galaxy, where even light struggled to reach, there existed a creature of such terrible power and unfathomable age that its very name was spoken only in whispers across the cosmos. The Korak, a beast as ancient as the stars themselves, was a living nightmare, a force of nature so fearsome that entire civilizations had crumbled in its wake. Legends spoke of its immense size, a monstrous being with scales blacker than the void of space, each as large as a city block, shimmering with an eerie obsidian sheen. Its eyes, two burning orbs of crimson, were said to pierce through the fabric of reality itself, and to gaze into them was to invite madness. For millennia, the Korak had been the terror of the galaxy. Entire fleets of warships, armed with the most advanced weaponry known to any species, had been deployed to combat it, only to be annihilated with ease. No weapon, no strategy, no alliance of starfaring species had ever been able to stand against it. The Korak devoured everything in its path, planets, stars, and the dreams of those who dared to resist. It was a force of pure destruction, unstoppable and relentless, driven by an insatiable hunger that knew no bounds. Yet as the eons passed, something within the Korak began to change. Its once insatiable hunger started to dull, and its rampages became less frequent. It still consumed entire star systems, but with each passing century, the intervals between its feeding frenzies grew longer. The galaxy, though still in terror of the beast, began to forget the immediacy of its threat. To the Korak, however, this change was a mystery. It had existed for so long, driven by primal instincts, that it had never questioned its purpose. It simply was. But now, deep within its ancient mind, a new sensation was beginning to stir, one that it had never encountered before: curiosity. This curiosity was an alien emotion to the Korak, a creature born of chaos and destruction. It had never known anything but the need to consume, to destroy. But now, as it drifted through the cold void of space, it found itself drawn to something different, something small, insignificant by any measure of its existence, but persistent. A faint signal, almost too weak to detect, yet somehow compelling enough to catch its attention. The signal came from a small, unremarkable star system on the edge of the galaxy, orbiting a yellow dwarf star. It was a place the Korak had overlooked for eons, too insignificant to warrant its wrath. But this signal, this strange pattern of sound and rhythm, reached out to the beast across the vast emptiness of space. It was a sequence of beeps and tones, arranged in a way that suggested structure, intent. It was almost as if someone was calling out to it. Intrigued, the Korak altered its course, turning its massive form towards the source of the signal. For the first time in countless millennia, it was not driven by hunger or destruction, but by something new. The void of space seemed to part before it as it moved, the fabric of reality itself warping in its wake. Stars dimmed and planets trembled as the Korak approached the tiny blue planet at the center of the signal's origin. On this distant world, oblivious to the cosmic horror approaching, was a young human named Alex. He lived in a modest apartment in a quiet town, spending his days working a mundane job and his nights indulging in his one true passion, amateur radio. Alex had always been fascinated by the idea of communicating with beings beyond Earth, a dream fueled by countless science fiction stories and late-night documentaries. Every evening after the sun had set and the world around him grew quiet, Alex would sit by his radio, broadcasting signals into the void, hoping that somewhere out there, someone or something might be listening. His latest project had been a simple one, a sequence of beeps and tones that he had carefully crafted to mimic what he thought might be a universal language. It was a playful tune, nothing more than a hobbyist's experiment. But Alex had poured his heart into it. He had no real expectations of making contact. After all, the universe was vast, and the chances of anyone picking up his signal were astronomically low. But still, he continued, night after night, sending his little message out into the unknown. What Alex could never have imagined was that his signal had reached the ears, or whatever passed for ears, of the most feared creature in the galaxy. As the Korak drew closer to Earth, it began to analyze the signal in greater detail. To the Korak, human language was meaningless, a mere collection of sounds with no inherent value. But the pattern, the structure of the signal was intriguing. It was not random, it had purpose, intent. The Korak, in its vast and ancient mind, began to feel something it had never felt before, an interest, a desire to understand. As it approached the solar system, the Korak slowed its pace, something it had never done before. Usually it would barrel through star systems, devouring everything in its path without a second thought. But now it was cautious, almost tentative, as if it was trying not to frighten the source of the signal. The tiny blue planet, Earth, came into view, a fragile orb of water and land suspended in the blackness of space. For a creature as immense and powerful as the Korak, Earth was nothing, a mere speck of dust in the vastness of the cosmos. But the signal was coming from this insignificant world, and the Korak found itself inexplicably drawn to it. It hovered just outside the planet's atmosphere, its colossal form cloaked in the shadows of space, undetectable by any of Earth's technology. It listened, waiting for the signal to repeat, to give it some clue as to the nature of this new and fascinating discovery. Inside his apartment, Alex was blissfully unaware of the unimaginable force that had come to visit his world. He was tweaking his radio equipment, trying to get the signal just right, when the lights in his apartment flickered. He frowned, looking up from his work. The hum of electricity in the walls grew louder, and his radio began to emit a low, rumbling tone that he had never heard before. "What the?" Alex muttered, leaning closer to the radio. He adjusted the dials, trying to clear the interference, but the rumbling persisted, growing louder and more intense. It was as if the radio was picking up something enormous, something powerful. Unbeknownst to Alex, the Korak was listening, its attention fully focused on this tiny creature who had reached out to it. The rumbling sound was the Korak's attempt to respond, to communicate in a way that the human might understand. It was an experiment, a test to see if this small, fragile being could comprehend its presence. "Hello?" Alex spoke into the microphone, his voice tinged with nervous excitement. "Is someone there?" There was a pause, and then the rumbling sound changed, becoming more rhythmic, more deliberate. Alex's eyes widened in astonishment. This was no ordinary interference. This was a response. I'm Alex," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Who, or what, are you?" The Korak didn't understand the words, but it recognized the tone, the intent behind them. It was a question, an inquiry. The creature pondered how to reply. It could annihilate this world in an instant, reduce it to dust with a mere thought. But something held it back. The curiosity, the strange new emotion that had driven it to this corner of the galaxy, urged it to continue the exchange. The rumbling sound softened, becoming almost melodic. It was the Korak's way of saying that it meant no harm, that it was here to listen, to understand. Alex, though he didn't fully grasp what was happening, felt a sense of awe and wonder. This was it, first contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence, and it was communicating with him. Outside, the night sky was peaceful, the stars twinkling innocently in the vastness of space. But just beyond the atmosphere, the most feared predator in the galaxy hovered, its unimaginable power held in check by a simple human's voice. The Korak, for the first time in its existence, was learning what it meant to connect with another being. And though it didn't realize it, this moment would change the course of its existence, and the galaxy, forever. Alex's apartment was bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp, the kind of warm, comforting light that made the place feel more like home. The faint hum of his radio filled the room, a familiar sound that had become a kind of background music to his life. But tonight that hum was different. It was underlined by a deep, resonant rumble, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of his apartment, making the air itself feel thick and heavy. He sat in front of his radio, hands slightly trembling as he adjusted the dials, trying to hone in on the strange signal that had hijacked his equipment. The usual static was gone, replaced by that low, steady tone. It wasn't random noise. It had a rhythm, a structure that Alex could almost comprehend. It felt like it was on the verge of being language, but not quite. "What is this?" Alex whispered to himself, leaning closer to the microphone. His heart was pounding in his chest, a mix of fear and excitement coursing through his veins. He had spent years broadcasting signals into space, but never in his wildest dreams had he expected a response like this. He cleared his throat, trying to steady his voice. "Hello?" he said, his voice wavering slightly. "Is someone there?" For a moment there was nothing but that deep rumbling sound. But then, to Alex's shock, the tone shifted. It was subtle, a slight modulation in frequency, but it was undeniably a response. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. He was not alone. Someone was out there, and it was trying to communicate with him. His mind raced with possibilities. Was it an alien species? A machine intelligence? Something beyond human understanding? The rational part of his brain screamed at him to be cautious, to disconnect the radio, to call someone, anyone, for help. But the part of him that had always dreamed of this moment, that had spent countless nights sending signals into the void, overpowered his fear. He took a deep breath and spoke again, this time with more confidence. "My name is Alex," he said, trying to keep his tone calm and welcoming. "Can you understand me?" The rumbling sound intensified, filling the room with its resonance. It wasn't like anything Alex had ever heard before. It was almost as if the sound was alive, pulsing with energy and intent. The tone shifted again, becoming more melodic, more purposeful. It was trying to communicate, but in a way that was utterly alien to human understanding. Alex's mind struggled to make sense of it. He was an amateur radio enthusiast, not a linguist or a scientist. He had no idea how to decode an extraterrestrial signal, let alone communicate with one. But he could feel the intent behind the sound, as if the entity on the other side was just as eager to understand him as he was to understand it. Suddenly, the lights in his apartment flickered again, and a strange sensation washed over him, a feeling of being watched. He glanced around the room, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows, but there was nothing. Just the quiet hum of the radio and the soft glow of the lamp. Outside, the night was calm, the stars twinkling in the clear sky. But beyond the atmosphere, just out of sight, the Korak hovered in the void, its immense form cloaked in the darkness of space. It watched the tiny blue planet below with a curiosity that bordered on obsession. The Korak had encountered countless forms of life in its long existence, but nothing like this. This small, fragile creature had reached out to it, and in doing so had awakened something within the ancient beast, a desire to understand, to connect. The Korak's mind, vast and complex, began to focus on the signal with renewed intensity. It had been trying to mimic the patterns it detected, to respond in kind, but it was a creature of a different reality, one that transcended physical form and language. The sounds it produced were echoes of its own thoughts, attempts to bridge the unimaginable gulf between its existence and that of the human it had found. But despite the differences, there was something in Alex's voice, in his tone and rhythm, that resonated with the Korak. It didn't understand the words, but it recognized the intent, the desire to communicate, to make contact. This small being was not a threat, not an enemy, but something different, something intriguing. Alex, still sitting by his radio, felt a strange calm settle over him. The fear that had gripped him earlier was fading, replaced by a sense of awe and wonder. He had no idea what this entity was, but he could feel that it wasn't hostile. It was as if the rumbling sound, so deep and powerful, was trying to convey a message of peace, of curiosity. He picked up his guitar, an old battered instrument that he often played to relax after a long day. Without really thinking about it, he began to strum a few chords, letting the music fill the room. It was a simple melody, one he had played countless times before, but tonight, it felt different. It felt important. As the notes filled the air, the rumbling sound from the radio began to change. It softened, becoming almost gentle, as if the entity was listening, trying to understand the music. Alex smiled, feeling an inexplicable connection with whatever was out there. "You like that, don't you?" he said softly, continuing to play. "Here, let me play you something else." He switched to a different tune, a slower, more melodic piece that had always been a favorite of his. As he played, the tone on the radio shifted in response, matching the rhythm of the music. It was an incredible moment. An alien intelligence, incomprehensible in its vastness, was trying to connect with him through music. Outside, the Korak was experiencing something entirely new. The vibrations of the music resonated through its immense form, stirring emotions it had never felt before. The ancient hunger, the primal drive that had defined its existence for eons, was fading, replaced by something softer, something comforting. The Korak didn't have a concept of friendship or affection, but in that moment, it felt a connection with the tiny being on the planet below. This human, this small, fragile creature had reached out to it in a way that no other life form had ever done. The Korak didn't fully understand what was happening, but it knew that it wanted more of this strange, beautiful experience. Alex continued to play, completely absorbed in the moment. The fear and uncertainty that had gripped him earlier were gone, replaced by a deep sense of peace. He didn't know what the future held, or what this entity truly was, but he knew that he had made contact with something extraordinary. As the night wore on, Alex eventually set his guitar aside and spoke into the microphone once more. "I don't know who you are or what you are," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "But I want you to know that I'm here. I'm listening." The response was immediate. The rumbling sound returned, soft and rhythmic like a gentle purr. It was a sound of understanding, of connection. Alex smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. The Korak, hovering silently in space, felt a similar warmth. It didn't know what this feeling was, or why it was happening, but it knew that it wanted to protect this tiny planet, this small human who had reached out to it. For the first time in its long existence, the Korak felt something other than the drive to consume and destroy. It felt a desire to preserve, to nurture, to protect. And so the bond between Alex and the Korak deepened, forged in the quiet hum of a radio signal and the gentle strumming of a guitar. The galaxy's most feared predator had found something it never knew it needed, a connection with another being, and in that connection, a new purpose. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Alex finally turned off his radio, exhaustion overtaking him. But even as he drifted off to sleep, a smile lingered on his lips. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, he had made a friend. And in the darkness of space, the Korak watched over the little blue planet, its massive form invisible to the world below. It had found something worth protecting, and it would do whatever it took to keep that connection alive. The days that followed were unlike anything Alex had ever experienced. The strange, rumbling tones from his radio had become a regular occurrence, almost like a new language that only he and this mysterious entity could understand. Every night, without fail, the signal would return, filling his small apartment with the deep, resonant sounds that now felt almost comforting. It was as if the creature on the other end was checking in on him, curious to hear his voice and the music he played. The bond that had started as a tentative connection was growing stronger with each passing day. Alex had begun to look forward to these nightly interactions, eagerly awaiting the moment when the familiar tones would fill the air. He found himself talking to the entity as if it were a close friend, sharing stories about his day, his hopes, and even his fears. It was a strange, one-sided conversation, but the rumbling sounds that followed his words always seemed to carry a sense of understanding, of empathy. As for the Korak, the creature that had once been the terror of the galaxy, it was undergoing a transformation of its own. The ancient hunger that had driven it to consume entire star systems was fading, replaced by something entirely new, a sense of contentment. The Korak had never known peace or companionship, but now it found itself lingering near Earth, drawn to the presence of the small human who had reached out to it. The Korak's mind, vast and alien, struggled to comprehend these new emotions. It had always been a creature of destruction, a force of nature that existed only to consume. But now it found itself wanting to protect this tiny planet, this fragile being who had shown it a glimpse of something beyond hunger and violence. The Korak didn't understand the concept of friendship, but it knew that it felt a connection with Alex that it had never experienced before. One evening, as Alex sat by his radio, strumming his guitar and humming a soft tune, the rumbling tones came through again. This time, however, they were different, more rhythmic, almost melodic, as if the Korak was trying to mimic the music Alex was playing. Alex's heart swelled with joy. The entity was learning, adapting, and even attempting to communicate in a way that resonated with him. "You're getting the hang of it," Alex said with a chuckle, his fingers dancing over the strings of his guitar. "I knew you had it in you." The Korak's response was immediate, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the apartment. It was a sound of satisfaction, of pride. The creature, despite its vast and ancient nature, was experiencing something akin to happiness. The connection it shared with this human was unlike anything it had ever known, and it found itself craving more of these interactions, these moments of understanding and connection. Alex continued to play, switching to a more upbeat tune, the notes filling the room with a lively energy. The rumbling tones shifted again, this time matching the rhythm of the music with surprising accuracy. Alex laughed, the sound filled with genuine delight. He had never imagined that he would be jamming with an alien entity, let alone one as powerful and ancient as the Korak. "You're a natural," Alex said, his voice filled with warmth. "I think we make a pretty good team." The Korak, though it couldn't understand the words, recognized the tone. It felt the warmth in Alex's voice, the sense of camaraderie that had developed between them. The creature, once feared and reviled across the galaxy, had found something it never knew it needed: a sense of belonging. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between Alex and the Korak only deepened. The Korak found itself spending more and more time near Earth, its colossal form hidden just beyond the planet's atmosphere. It watched over the little blue planet, not as a predator, but as a guardian, a protector. The idea of causing harm to this world, or to the human who had reached out to it, was now unthinkable. Meanwhile, Alex's life had taken on a new rhythm. His days were filled with the usual routines: work, errands, and the occasional outing with friends. But his nights had become something entirely different. They were a time of connection, of communication with a being that was beyond his wildest dreams. He found himself eagerly anticipating the moment when the sun would set, and he could return to his radio, to the conversations and music that had become the highlight of his life. One night, as Alex was tuning his radio, he heard something new, an unfamiliar tone, different from the usual rumbling sounds that he had grown accustomed to. It was higher in pitch, almost like a question. Alex frowned, adjusting the dials to get a clearer signal. The tone repeated, this time with more urgency. "What is it?" Alex asked, leaning closer to the microphone. "Is something wrong?" The response was immediate. The rumbling sound returned, but it was mixed with the new tone, creating a complex pattern that Alex struggled to decipher. It was as if the Korak was trying to communicate something important, something that it couldn't express through its usual sounds. Alex's heart began to race. He had never heard the Korak sound like this before. There was a tension in the tones, a sense of urgency that put him on edge. "Are you in trouble?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. The rumbling sound intensified, vibrating through the room with a power that made the air hum. The new tone repeated again, this time even more insistent. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever was happening, it was serious. Unknown to Alex, the Korak had sensed something, a disturbance in the vastness of space, something that set off every alarm in its ancient mind. A powerful force was approaching the solar system, something that the Korak recognized as a potential threat. But this time, the creature didn't feel the familiar urge to destroy or consume. Instead, it felt a fierce protectiveness, a need to defend the world that had become its home. The Korak's vast mind raced with possibilities. It had encountered many threats in its long existence, but this was different. The presence it sensed was powerful, and it was heading straight for Earth. The Korak knew it had to act, but it didn't want to frighten the human who had become its friend. It needed to communicate the danger without causing panic. Alex, still sitting by his radio, could sense the tension in the air. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew it wasn't good. "Listen," he said, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his heart. "Whatever's out there, we'll face it together. You're not alone." The Korak's response was a deep, resonant tone that filled the room with warmth. It was a sound of agreement, of reassurance. The creature, for the first time in its existence, was not facing a threat alone. It had a reason to fight, a reason to protect, and that reason was a small, fragile human named Alex. As the hours passed, the tension in the air grew thicker. The strange tone that had alerted Alex to the danger had faded, replaced by the familiar rumbling sounds that had become a comforting presence in his life. But Alex could feel the undercurrent of anxiety in those tones, a silent warning that something was coming. Finally, just as the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon, the sky above Earth lit up with a brilliant flash. Alex rushed to his window, his heart pounding in his chest. In the sky above, he could see something. Shapes, moving in the darkness, large and ominous. His mind raced with fear and confusion. Was this an invasion? A natural disaster? He had no idea what to expect. In space, just beyond Earth's atmosphere, the Korak moved with a speed and grace that belied its immense size. It positioned itself between the planet and the approaching threat, its massive form shielding Earth from whatever was coming. The Korak's eyes glowed with a fierce determination, a resolve that had been born from its bond with Alex. The shapes in the sky grew larger, revealing themselves to be a fleet of alien ships, sleek and advanced, bristling with weaponry. The Galactic Coalition had finally taken notice of the Korak's unusual behavior, and they had come to investigate. But they had not come alone. They had brought with them a fleet capable of subduing even the most powerful entities in the galaxy. The Korak let out a roar that echoed through the void of space, a sound so powerful that it shook the very fabric of reality. It was a warning, a declaration that this world was under its protection. The alien fleet hesitated, their sensors picking up the immense power of the creature before them. The Korak was a legend, a nightmare that had haunted the galaxy for eons, and even with their advanced technology, the aliens were uncertain if they could defeat it. But the Korak wasn't here to destroy, it was here to protect. The creature, once driven by an insatiable hunger, had found something worth defending. It would not allow this fleet to harm the planet that had become its home, nor the human who had shown it kindness. The alien ships moved into formation, their weapons trained on the Korak. But before they could fire, the Korak acted. With a speed that defied comprehension, it launched itself at the fleet, its massive body moving with precision and purpose. The Korak's roar filled the void, a sound that carried with it the full force of its ancient power. The first alien ship was torn apart in an instant, its debris scattering into the darkness. The second and third ships followed soon after, their shields unable to withstand the Korak's relentless assault. The remaining ships faltered, their captains realizing too late that they were hopelessly outmatched. As the Korak tore through the fleet, its mind remained focused on its mission: protect Earth, protect Alex. The bond it shared with the human had given it a new purpose, a reason to fight that went beyond mere survival. The Korak was no longer just a predator, it was a guardian. Back on Earth, Alex watched in awe as the sky above erupted in flashes of light and fire. He had no idea what was happening, but he could sense that the Korak was out there, fighting to protect him. A feeling of gratitude and admiration swelled in his chest. He had never imagined that he would be the reason for such a powerful creature to take action. Within minutes, the alien fleet was in full retreat, the few remaining ships fleeing into the depths of space. The Korak watched them go, its eyes glowing with a fierce protectiveness. It had defended its home, and it would continue to do so for as long as it existed. As the last of the alien ships disappeared from view, the Korak let out a final roar, one that echoed through the stars as a warning to any who might threaten Earth in the future. It then returned to its position above the planet, its massive form cloaked in the darkness of space, invisible to those below. In his apartment, Alex sat down, his heart still racing from the intensity of the experience. He had no way of knowing the full extent of what had just happened, but he knew one thing for sure: his friend had protected him. The Korak, the most feared creature in the galaxy, had become his guardian. "Thank you," Alex whispered into the microphone, his voice filled with emotion. The response was immediate. The rumbling sound filled the room, soft and content, a sound that carried with it the warmth of understanding, of connection. The Korak, for the first time in its long existence, had found something more important than destruction. It had found a friend. And so, the galaxy's most feared predator became the protector of a small, fragile planet on the edge of the cosmos. The Korak, the ancient beast that had once brought fear and devastation to countless worlds, had found a new purpose. A purpose born from a simple human who had reached out with a signal and a bit of music. The bond between Alex and the Korak would continue to grow, a connection that would change not only their lives but the fate of the entire galaxy. For in that bond, a new force had been born, one of understanding, of friendship, and of an unwavering commitment to protect what truly mattered. The aftermath of the battle left Alex in a state of awe and disbelief. The sky had returned to its usual serene state, the stars twinkling innocently as if nothing extraordinary had just occurred. But Alex knew better. He had witnessed something that defied explanation, a cosmic event far beyond the scope of human understanding. His alien friend, the Korak, had defended Earth from an invasion, demonstrating a level of power and loyalty that Alex could scarcely comprehend. For the next few days, Alex found it difficult to focus on anything other than the events that had transpired. He went about his daily routines, but his mind was always on the Korak, wondering what it was doing, how it was feeling, and whether it was still watching over the planet. He couldn't shake the feeling of gratitude and responsibility that had settled in his chest. Somehow, through an improbable series of events, he had formed a bond with the most powerful creature in the galaxy, and that bond had changed both of their lives forever. The world, however, remained blissfully unaware of the cosmic battle that had taken place just beyond its atmosphere. To everyone else, it was just another ordinary day. But Alex knew that things were different now. He had seen the lengths to which the Korak was willing to go to protect Earth, and he couldn't help but feel a deep connection to the creature. A connection that transcended the boundaries of species, of time and space. One evening, as Alex was sitting by his radio, the familiar rumbling tones filled the room once again. This time, however, they were softer, more subdued, as if the Korak was reaching out with a sense of calm and reassurance. Alex smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart as he responded. "Hey there," Alex said softly, his fingers resting on the microphone. "I was starting to worry about you." The tones that came through the radio were gentle, almost soothing, like a lullaby sung by the stars themselves. The Korak was communicating a sense of peace, of contentment. The battle had been won, and the threat to Earth had been neutralized. But more than that, the Korak was expressing something deeper, a feeling of fulfillment, of purpose. Alex leaned back in his chair, letting out a sigh of relief. "I can't believe what you did," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You protected us, protected me. I don't know how to thank you." The response was immediate, a low, resonant tone that vibrated through the room. It wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling, a warm, comforting presence that wrapped around Alex like an embrace. The Korak didn't need words to convey its message. It was simply glad that Alex was safe, that Earth was safe. For the first time in its long existence, the Korak had found something worth more than its own survival, a connection that gave its life meaning. As the days turned into weeks, life on Earth continued as usual. But for Alex, everything had changed. He continued to communicate with the Korak every night, their bond growing stronger with each interaction. The Korak had become more than just a mysterious entity in the void. It was a friend, a guardian, and in some strange way, a companion. Alex found himself talking to the Korak about everything, his hopes, his dreams, his worries. And though the responses were always in that same rumbling, melodic tone, Alex felt understood, felt heard. One night, as Alex was playing a soft melody on his guitar, the rumbling tone from the radio became more insistent, more focused. Alex paused, listening intently. The Korak was trying to convey something important, something different from their usual exchanges. The tone was lower, more resonant, almost like a warning. "What is it?" Alex asked, setting his guitar aside. "Is something wrong?" The tone that followed was more complex, a series of modulations that Alex struggled to interpret. He had spent so much time with the Korak that he could often sense the emotions behind the sounds. But this was something new, something he hadn't encountered before. There was a sense of urgency, of caution. Outside, the night was still and quiet, but Alex felt a growing unease. The Korak was trying to tell him something, and he needed to understand. He leaned closer to the microphone, his voice steady despite the anxiety creeping into his chest. "Are we in danger?" he asked, his mind racing with possibilities. "Is it something out there? Or something here?" The response was immediate, a low, rumbling tone that seemed to resonate with a deep sense of concern. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The Korak was worried, and if a creature as powerful as the Korak was concerned, then whatever was coming had to be serious. Alex's mind raced as he tried to piece together what the Korak was communicating. It wasn't just about Earth. It was about something bigger, something that affected the entire galaxy. The tone was insistent, urging Alex to be vigilant, to be prepared for what was to come. And then suddenly the tone shifted, becoming softer, more melodic. It was as if the Korak was trying to reassure him, to let him know that no matter what happened, it would be there to protect him, to protect Earth. The Korak had made a choice to stand as a guardian, not just for Alex, but for the entire planet. Alex felt a surge of emotion, a mix of fear, gratitude, and determination. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain: he wasn't alone. The Korak, the most feared predator in the galaxy, was on his side, and together they would face whatever came their way. The next few days were a blur of activity. Alex found himself preparing in ways he never had before, stocking up on supplies, checking his radio equipment, and making sure he was ready for anything. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something that would change everything. But he also knew that he had a powerful ally in the Korak, and that gave him the strength to face the unknown. Meanwhile, the Korak remained vigilant, its massive form hidden just beyond Earth's atmosphere. It could sense the growing tension in the galaxy, the subtle shifts in the fabric of reality that hinted at a larger conflict brewing. The Korak knew that it had a role to play, not just as a protector of Earth, but as a force of balance in the galaxy. It had spent eons as a destroyer, but now it would become something else, something more. One evening, as Alex was sitting by his radio, The familiar rumbling tones filled the room once again, but this time they were different. There was a sense of finality in the sounds, a feeling that something was about to change. Alex leaned forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The response was a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through his very bones. It was a sound of resolve, of determination. The Korak was ready to face whatever threat was coming, ready to protect Earth and its inhabitants. But there was something else in the tone, something that Alex hadn't heard before. A sense of farewell, of preparation for a journey that would take the Korak far from its new home. Alex's breath caught in his throat. "Are you leaving?" he asked, his voice trembling with emotion. The tone that followed was softer, almost gentle, as if the Korak was trying to comfort him. It wasn't a permanent goodbye, it was a promise. The Korak would always be watching over Earth, always be connected to Alex no matter where it went. But it had a mission to fulfill, a responsibility that extended beyond the boundaries of this small blue planet. Tears welled up in Alex's eyes as he realized what the Korak was telling him. It was going to protect the galaxy, to ensure that the forces threatening Earth and other worlds were kept in check. The Korak had embraced its new role as a guardian, a protector not just of Earth, but of all life. "I understand," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything. I'll never forget you." The response was a deep, resonant tone filled with warmth, a final farewell that echoed through the room. And then, slowly, the tone began to fade, the connection growing fainter until it was gone, leaving behind a profound silence that filled the room. Alex sat there for a long time, staring at the radio, feeling a mixture of sadness and pride. The Korak was gone, but its presence lingered in his heart, a reminder of the incredible bond they had shared. He knew that the Korak was out there watching over the galaxy, and that gave him a sense of peace. And so life on Earth continued, much as it had before. But Alex knew that things would never be the same. The Korak, once the most feared predator in the galaxy, had become a force for good, a guardian of the cosmos. And though it was far away, Alex knew that their bond would never be broken. As the years passed, stories began to spread across the galaxy. Stories of a powerful creature that appeared in times of great need, defending the weak and protecting entire star systems from destruction. The legends spoke of a being with eyes that glowed like burning embers, a creature that moved through the void with unmatched speed and strength. But most of all, they spoke of the creature's compassion, of its unwavering commitment to protect those who could not protect themselves. And though few knew the truth, the name of the Korak became synonymous with hope, with the promise that even in the darkest of times there would always be a guardian watching over the galaxy. On Earth, Alex continued to live his life, carrying the memories of his time with the Korak close to his heart. He never forgot the bond they had shared, the friendship that had grown between them. And every night as he sat by his radio, he would look up at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, his friend was watching over him, protecting the galaxy they had both come to love. And in the vastness of space, the Korak continued its mission, a silent guardian moving through the stars, ready to defend the galaxy from any threat that dared to rise. It was no longer just a predator. It was a protector, a symbol of hope and strength in a galaxy that had once feared it. The Korak had found its purpose, and in doing so, it had found something even more precious. A reason to protect, a reason to fight, and a reason to care. And that reason, born from a simple human who had reached out with a signal and a bit of music, had changed the fate of the entire galaxy.